Shapiro. Jenny hace parte de Premis, es licenciada en Antropología y Estudios en Desarrollo Internacional de la Universidad de California. Cuenta con un máster en Salud Pública y actualmente es directora de éxito de clientes y tiene más de 3 años trabajando con Premis. Entre sus principales logros son la experiencia en investigación y programación en salud y el impacto social, tanto en situaciones de emergencia como en contextos humanitarios. Adelante, Jenny.
So I'm going to give an overview of Premis's approach to citizen-generated data. I'm going to speak a little bit about how the platform works and our different data collection capabilities. And then I'll provide a few case studies that I feel are really relevant to kind of showcase how Premis collects ground level insights, and I think are also really complementary to some of the other presentations that we've heard today. So I think we can all agree that data-driven humanitarian work is more effective and saves lives. And we can also understand that a lot of humanitarian organizations are often forced to make decisions without optimal data. Unfortunately, traditional field data collection approaches are often too time-intensive and costly to warrant doing before making many decisions, particularly during a dynamic and evolving crisis. So at Premis, we believe that with increasing mobile networks, internet connectivity, and smartphone usage, we should be able to get better data faster. We do that using the Premis platform. We have a mobile application that's available to download for free on iOS and Android. And we work on a two-sided marketplace model. On one side, we have our global contributor network. We have over 3 million global data contributors in 128 countries and are currently operational in 37 languages. And our contributors download the app and collect insights and submit tasks. And then they're paid for each task that they submit using a micro incentive model. I'll talk a little bit more about our data collection capabilities in the next slide, but to provide an overview, we have survey data collection, which is self-reported via the mobile application. Then we have what we call locate tasks, where we ask our contributors to go out into the community and identify different points of interest, identify, report, and photograph these different points of interest. Explore tasks are similar to locate tasks, except we ask contributors to go to specific points on a map or specific areas to submit observations, take photographs, and report on information. And then our most advanced form of data collection are interview tasks, in which we ask our contributors to go out into their community and find specific people at different points or locations, or people from specific populations to interview and then record their responses on the application. The other side of our marketplace consists of our partners. We work with several international development, global health, and humanitarian assistance organizations, as well as many local and national government entities. We also do have a commercial vertical at our company that works with CPG brands, retailers, banks, and other technology companies, et cetera. And so our partners commission tasks. We work directly with them to design and deploy those tasks on the platform, and then they're able to extract and utilize those insights, mainly through the Premis portal, which allows our clients to monitor tasks, analyze data, and export that data in real time. So a little bit more on our data collection capabilities. In this chart, you can see them organized by kind of complexity or level of effort on behalf of the contributor. On one side, we have our surveys. Again, they're self-reported on different sentiment topics. We usually try to cap them at about 25 question max to avoid survey fatigue. And they can be done from anywhere, including the comfort of our contributor's home. The rest of our tasks ask our contributors to leave their home and go out into their community. We have locate tasks, which are self-directed observations, meaning we ask our contributors to go out and find, geolocate and take photo validated observations on kind of different categories of points of interest. So this can enable them to help map health facilities, supermarkets, and other types of infrastructure within their community. And we also use it a lot for price monitoring of different goods. The next two types of data collection, I think, are what we use most often with our humanitarian assistance partners. So explore tasks are directed observations, meaning we ask contributors to go to a specific location, such as a specific health facility or a specific area, which could be a settlement. And again, take geolocated or georeferenced information and photo observations. And then our advanced form of data collection, again, asks our contributors to act as enumerators, where they go to a specific location and speak to people on the ground, and then they record those responses via our application. And so there's a lot of different ways that this can be applied in the humanitarian space in terms of surveys of migrants and host communities, mapping and validating critical infrastructure, conducting sectoral assessments or monitoring humanitarian activities, and collecting beneficiary feedback. Now I'm going to walk you through a few examples of how this has actually been deployed on the ground with some of our partners in the humanitarian space. So we have used Premise for mapping informal settlements in northern Nigeria and Colombia. And in this instance, we asked local citizens to validate locations of migrant and displaced populations. So a little bit earlier, you heard Pia from Thinking Machines discuss how they use satellite imagery to detect things such as informal settlements on the ground. And then in Colombia, we actually worked with IMAP and Thinking Machines. We were able to use that satellite imagery to locate where they thought possible locations for informal settlements were for Venezuelans coming into Colombia. And then we had our contributors go and visit those locations to validate if they indeed exist and conduct needs assessments. In northern Nigeria, we were working with Grid 3 out of the Columbia Earth Institute to also map more recent settlements for the use of microplanning for mass vaccination campaigns, which allowed them to ensure that even hard to reach populations were able to receive kind of these basic medical services. So once our contributors had reached these locations of informal settlements or recent settlements, they were able to upload photos and provide information about infrastructure and available resources. In Colombia, we used proxy indicators adapted from the Mira and WASH needs assessments and focused on a variety of different themes, including food security, access to sanitary facilities, health education, water sources, construction material, and the presence of national and international aid organizations. And then in northern Nigeria, we also be able to detect, was there a health facility present in these settlements, and were there any other, points of critical infrastructure where a vaccine campaign could take place. And so kind of the basis of this was to save time assessing needs and planning, which could lead to faster and more effective delivery of aid. For example, in Colombia, when we were working with IMAP, we were able to validate 385 different settlements and then return to 350 of those settlements on a quarterly basis to conduct those needs assessments. And so that was really helpful in terms of saving time and resources for the IMAP staff. And allowing them to understand what the critical needs were on the ground and how they could use their resources more effectively to address those needs. We were also collecting data on female education in Afghanistan. This was a combination of survey, locate, and explore tasks to assess the state of female education in Taliban-ruled Afghanistan after the withdrawal of US troops. So again, kind of very interesting mirror to the data collection that was happening on RIWI, that RIWI was conducting after the withdrawal of US troops in Afghanistan. And so what we did here was use a variety of different tasks to validate, just kind of get a sense of what was happening on the ground in relationship to women and girls and young women being able to return to school. So we used explore tasks that were designed for collecting observations on the conditions of schools that had previously been identified as serving women in several provinces in Afghanistan. We coupled that with household education surveys that identified where households that had girls and young women who would be attending school or school age. We then sent another survey on female education opportunities and then had them conduct 2 different locate tasks to show, did they still have materials in the household for educational materials in the household, and then go out into their community and document schools in their local community and understand, what was their operational status, and could they observe, women in the area? Could they get a sense if women and girls and young women were returning to school? Lastly, I want to talk a little bit about our ongoing data collection in the Ukraine and neighboring countries. So Premise is actively collecting data from survey, locate, and explore tasks, both within Ukraine and in the neighboring countries of Poland, Moldova, and Romania, which are receiving the bulk of the refugees leaving Ukraine, on a variety of topics surrounding the current humanitarian crisis. Again, Rivi was able to touch on the survey data that they're collecting there. So I think it's a nice parallel to talk about the observational tasks that we're running right now, including looking at pharmacies and medical supplies, food price monitoring, food stores. You can see over here that we have a photo of completely empty or roped off supermarket shelves near Mariupol from just last week. We're also looking at household food and utilities, fuel prices and availability, and then generally on topics of displacement and migration, including refugee processing centers, and informational posters and signs in the neighboring countries that are receiving the refugees. And we're using an open build model to understand the needs of humanitarian actors, meaning we're asking for insights from different organizations on what data they need in order to deliver aid effectively to this area. And then we're providing that data to vetted partners. And so an example of this is a large provider of emergency medical commodities is now using Premise to get stock data from pharmacies in Ukraine. This is just a few other examples of the data we've collected at fuel stations. So contributors' observations reinforced survey responses with numerous photos of previously stocked fuel stations now showing higher prices and diminished or depleted supplies. So over here, we had a photo of a certain fuel station from November 2021. And then on this photo on the right and on the left, and then on the right, we can see from just a couple of days ago, March 20th, 2022, completely diminished fuel supplies. Over here, we can also see from March 10th, 2021, a fuel station in another eastern province in Ukraine. And here, just from last week, you can see, again, stocks have been diminished and the prices for what is available have gone up significantly. We've also looked at IDP housing across the country. Premise has been collecting information about the types of infrastructure being used for housing internally displaced persons. We have primarily identified permanent structures for shelter, such as houses or apartments, rather than temporary camps. But as you can see, we have a submission near the Slovakian border over here of a group shelter with several beds being repurposed in buildings, and also an underground basement where a contributor has been sheltering outside of Kiev from also just last week. So just wanted to provide these examples to show how Premise has been able to provide insights on what is happening on the ground, especially in a very dynamic and constantly evolving crisis, with the goal, of course, being to provide humanitarian decision makers with data they need to deliver resources and aid more effectively. That's all.